Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new here. I'm back in the UK and I know I said I was going to film a Berlin vlog, but I didn't because it was honestly really hard to vlog when you're on a city break and just walking among the touristy chaos. But I have something even better for you today. I am going to talk about my God tier romance books. I've done a God tier books in general, but I want to specifically talk about romance, and to be honest, a lot of new things have made the cut recently because I am having a great reading year so far. So let's get into it. I'm super excited to talk about the first book because it is actually one of the ones that I mentioned as being new to this list, and that is Nightshade by Autumn Woods. I literally just finished this yesterday, but it was an immediate 5 stars and I absolutely have to talk about it because it is so underrated. Nightshade is book 1 in a duet. Book 2 is not out yet and I don't know when it's going to be out. However, I would still advise reading it so that we can make sure the author gets enough support to make sure there is a book 2. But it's essentially like romantic suspense and dark academia, and it's very much an NA sort of audience. It's like not adult but not YA for definite. And it follows our main character Ophelia as she attends this elite boarding school, and she is not from a privileged background. She's from a council estate in Scotland, and she is very much attending this board school with a specific reason, and that reason is to uncover the mystery of her parents' death and to get revenge. Her parents were killed in a helicopter accident, and the helicopter airline is basically ran by this billionaire CEO who does unethical business all the time, and she very much thinks that he is to blame because there's something kind of weird about the accident and it didn't all add up. The only problem is when she gets to this boarding school, her partner in a class project is the son of this billionaire, and she very much thinks he is cut from the same cloth and she wants nothing to do with him. She wants to get revenge on his family, to be exact, and then part ways from this school. But weird things keep happening while she's at this school, and it turns out she has this stalker, and this stalker is very much hellbent on making her life a living hell. They cause carnage, and it just so happens that Alex is the person that is able to help her in some ways. I really did not expect to love this book as much as I did. I hadn't really heard anything about it. The reason I read it was because I follow the author on Instagram, and all of the little fan art for it that she posts on her Instagram was so cute, and she did one of those pictures of the characters with the tropes around it, and I thought the tropes were quite unusual, quite different, so I wanted to give it a go. But I honestly did not have 5-star expectations, especially because I think it is a debut for that author. But honestly, it blew me away. It was very unusual and fresh. Like I said, it's set in a boarding school, so it does have really dark academia, eerie, gothic, moody, miserable autumn vibes, which is one of my favourite things. But then it also has these like thriller elements of the murder mystery, and also unravelling who the stalker is and what they actually want. But then you also have this romance, and the romance is so good because it's very slow burn and it feels quite realistic, and there's also both of the main characters dealing with their own issues in it, and it's very sensitively handled. There is like depression representation, and obviously with Ophelia losing her parents, grief is a core part of the story. Alex for me was such a lovable character. He was very different to other male love interests in that his whole core belief system and his motivations are about looking after his 6 younger sisters, and so he definitely has a very caring, nurturing side, even though he still is brooding and kind of angsty when you first meet him as a character. Ophelia is very soft and sensitive. She doesn't like tech, like she's a bit of a grandma young adult, and I related to that quite a lot, and I think a lot of us introverted book readers will, so I also loved her. But them two together was just the cutest romance ever. I was absolutely obsessed, and honestly the ending, like, oh, I just need a book 2 immediately. So I would love to see more people reading this book. It definitely needs more hype. matcha break. That was a long review for me. Another new favourite god tier romance book for me is Yours Truly by Ali Jimenez. I love the whole of that little mini series, but Yours Truly specifically really stood out to me. It follows Brianna, who is a doctor, and if you do kind of need to read book one first, which is part of your world, but you can technically read it as a standalone, but you'll get more introduction to Brianna as a character in her life if you read book one. But essentially, she has had a divorce. She is very unhappy in the sense that she has a sick brother. She's going through a divorce. Like, her life has just not turned out the way that she thought it would. She is also applying for the job of head of her doctor's department. I think it's A&E if I remember correctly, but she's applying for the head of the role. And then one day, a new doctor turns up who is also applying for the role, and that is Jacob Maddox. Now, you can probably see where this is going and you think, oh, it's going to be like enemies to lovers, like they're competing for the role. And whilst it seems like that at the beginning, it does not kind of go like that. It goes in a whole new direction. Turns out Jacob has really, really bad anxiety and he does not want to be enemies with Brianna, so they start writing letters to each other at work and leaving them on their lockers so that they can avoid this conflict of applying for the same position. He also finds out that her brother has got kidney failure and he decides to donate the kidney. As the story progresses, their friendship turns into more and they date, and I don't want to say too much because it's a really special book that has such big focus on chronic illness, kidney failure, anxiety, but also other things that turn out to be a surprise. And the way the story develops is really, really beautiful. I think it's a book that everyone should read. I believe it is own voices for Ali Jimenez as well. In the back of the book, she does talk about her own experience with kidney failure, and I think that's why it's as impactful as it is, because it clearly has a lot of love and research put into it. So if you relate to chronic illness or disability in any way, I think this one is a must read. And also the anxiety rep specifically is the best mental health representation I think I've ever read in a romance book. The characters are so lovable. Like, I honestly think about them all the time, and it's just such a sweet, heartwarming, but also emotional book. If you like Emily Henry, I would say that this is a must read. I'm going to cheat now and pick one that is technically romantasy, but the reason I'm including it in my god tier romance is because I think the romance is the star of the show, and that is Amid Clouds and Bones. This is a standalone NA romantasy about a war between Unseelie and Seelie Faye, and our main character is actually half Faye, and so she's a little bit ostracised from society, but she is then also forced into a marriage of convenience. The marriage of convenience is with a Faye prince who is such a brat. If you have read Cruel Prince and you loved Carden, you need to read this because he gives such Carden energy. Honestly, that was what I love most about this. It gave me such adult, romantic, spicy Cruel Prince vibes in general. It was such a good one. The two characters obviously are navigating both Faye politics and also their marriage of convenience, and they are very much enemies. But the romance between them is so good. It is full of mind games, full of politics. There's so much aggressive tension, and then the tension turns to yearning. There is also a bit of a love triangle situation at one point, which very much makes the book even better. I'm not normally a love triangle person, but in this case it really works, and it just really has this like addictive quality because you really want to see how they get from point A to point B because of how much they hate each other at the start. It's very much like true enemies to lovers. And obviously I talked about our main love interest being like bratty Carden. Don't worry, the female main character is also great, and she very much gives as good as she gets. She is not just going to take things lying down, she is also a strong minded character. But 100%, if you want like a romantasy palette cleanser, this is the one to go for. I love a cowboy romance. I don't know what it is. I think it must be because it's so far removed from my reality as someone who lives in London, a capital city, but specifically in the cowboy romance genre, I love the Rebel Blue Ranch series. It's my favourite of all the cowboy romance series that I have read, And I would say that I love Swift and Saddled Book 2 the most in that series, and that is a god tier romance book to me. If you don't know, this whole series follows a family that live on a ranch and own a ranch, and this book follows the middle child in the family, Wes. Wes is such a dynamic character because throughout the books you see him as this like happy-go-lucky older brother to Emmy and a bit of a golden retriever mischievous younger brother to Gus, but in this one we learn that he has a major depressive disorder, and it unravels like a whole nother side to his personality. The mental health representation is done really, really well. It's so sensitively handled, and I think it just adds a whole nother level to this romance and makes it very relatable for people that deal with mental health issues themselves. Our female main character is Ada, who is an interior designer who comes to work on a project at the ranch, but they have already had a one-night stand, so there is instantly this kind of like, oh crap, you know, moment between them. But she is quite fiercely independent as well, so she definitely wants to resist Wes's advances. It does kind of almost have an insta-love vibe to it, which I personally normally hate. Like, that is my pet hate, but for some reason with this it really works. It's like, as characters, they are the sun and the moon, and they are like orbiting around each other throughout their time together. Ada's also like a deeply sensitive character. She's very much the artistic type. She's quite alternative, and there's just something about this that is so unique but so beautiful and so well thought out that really works. However, I will say that I also really love Lost and Lassoed and Wild and Wrangled, which are book 3 and 4 in the series as well. They all basically have like very similar ratings. This is 4.75, Lost and Lassoed was 4.5, and Wild and Wrangled was 4.5 as well. Another one of my favourite romance books, my absolute god tier romance book, is Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood, and also another Ali Hazelwood book that I will talk about shortly after this. This one, to me, I know this doesn't get that much love, but I think this is basically like the perfect rom-com because it has equal parts humour and equal parts romance. It has such interesting characters, not just the two main characters, but the side characters are so funny, like hilarious. The work environment dynamic really works. Like, there's just a lot about this that I think makes it such a funny, light-hearted, heartwarming book. It follows Bea and Levi, who are working at the same place together on a project. They are both scientists, so it very much still has Ali Hazelwood's STEM-based setting, but they do not get off to a good start. She thinks that he is purposely like causing her problems, but as the story develops, they kind of develop a friendship, which then obviously turns into more. Levi is one of my favourite love interests in a book ever. He is the best. Like, he is so sweet. He's very unusual, he's very quiet, he's very introverted, but it just works so well because Bea is a little bit more chaotic, she's funny, and they just have this perfect dynamic between them. Like I said, there are also really funny side characters in this. Her assistant honestly steals the show. She's like this gothic, horror-loving scientist with deadpan, dry humour who always has like a true crime reference that just kind of like kills the mood and it's just really funny, and I actually really recommend the audio of this as well. I did a reread via audio and I thought it was even funnier that way because the narrator landed the jokes so well. The other Ali Hazelwood book that is god tier to me is Not in Love, and this one actually has a very different vibe to Love on the Brain. The covers are quite similar, but do not be fooled. I personally don't think this one is a rom-com, and she says that herself in the author introduction at the beginning. She says this is not her usual rom-com. It's a little bit more sad, but it's also more of an erotica as well. In that sense, it is a little bit spicier than her previous books before this one. But this one basically follows Rue and Eli, who meet just on a dating app for a hookup, and they think nothing more of it. Rue is very much independent. She does not want a commitment because she has her walls up very high and she's a very guarded person. Eli is more of like a businessman in STEM setting, but he is also raising his younger sister and he does not have the time for the commitment. And so in very different ways, they have a very similar situation and a setup, but they are thrown together together after their hookup because the business he is partner at wants to acquire the business that she works at, and so they are in this like forced proximity scenario, but also kind of like enemies to lovers, because Rue thinks that this company trying to acquire where she works is unethical, and you know, it's just not going well, this working relationship between them. But aside from that sort of romance trope and dynamic that we see quite often, this very much has a focus on their upbringing and their lives as children, which were both very impoverished and unstable. Rue has dealt with like a lot of food insecurity throughout her life and child poverty, and it's very much shaped her into who she is now, and that's part of the reason she's so standoffish and guarded, because she has always had to be the person looking out for her. And Eli has a situation, like I said before, where he is raising his younger sister, so he also knows what it's like to be the only person you can rely on. So the relationship that develops between them is a little bit more in depth, I would say, than some of her other books, and I think that's why it works so well. It's very emotional for such a small book, and it feels like a different kind of a mood for Ali Hazelwood. I'm gonna kind of cheat again and do something that isn't technically pure romance, and it is more of like a gothic paranormal romance, and that is the Tales of Weeping Hollow series. Again, I'm including this because I think the romance is the star of the show and the best part of the plot, because each book as well follows a new couple and very much like tells the story of their relationship, whilst the thread of the fantasy element continues on in the background throughout both books. So book 1 is Hollow Heathens, book 2 is Bone Island. Book 1 follows Julian and Fallon. Julian may very well be in my top book boyfriends, especially in the fantasy romance space of all time. I absolutely love him. I think something to note is that both of these love interests are masked and cursed, if that is your vibe. It very much has like a dark romance feel to it, which, to be fair, I'm not really a dark romance reader, but I still loved these. But book 1 follows Fallon as she moves into this spooky, eerie town because her granddad is sick and he has no one else and she needs to look after him. Only problem is the town has these like warring witch covens, and they are both claiming ownership of her, and she is very much in the middle of this long warring history between the covens. She decides to be like, you know what, F this, I'm leaving. Except the town won't let her leave. The town is sentient. So she's stuck here in this crossfire, and she keeps seeing this masked guy over and over again who is the leader of one of the covens, and there is just this like push and pull between them, even though he absolutely seems to hate her for some reason. And of course you can see where this is going, but the romance itself is just great because it's very slow burn, it's very angsty, and he is just delicious. Book 2 follows Stone and Adora. Very different vibes. Adora is she's a very complex, interesting female main character. She has a little bit of bitterness inside her. She's very sassy, but I think there is something really relatable about that. I'd much rather have a complex female main character than just another sunshiny rom-com girl, you know? Stone is a little bit more sensitive, and he has this really complex past because he has been reincarnated and he has gone through a lot of violent trauma in his past lives. There is something that keeps pulling them together, even though she is betrothed to someone else and he has this curse to unravel and figure out for himself. This one very much feels gothic and poetic and lyrical. There is lots of secret rendezvous in a lighthouse. There is lots of metaphors about the ocean and the moon and the waves and storms. Like, it's just a very atmospheric, beautiful story, and both of them have such amazing romances. Is it even a romance book recommendation list if I don't talk about Magnolia Parks? I love this series so much. I have a Magnolia Parks tattoo. I was just blown away by these when I read them because they are so unique. It follows Magnolia, who is sort of like an it girl. She is the daughter of a Grammy award-winning producer and a Russian socialite heiress, and so she has this elite life where she goes to like the best boarding school. She lives in a really wealthy part of London. All her friends are super rich. She's constantly getting papped by the paparazzi. Like, she is the moment, you know. All her friends, like I said, have similar lifestyles, and they are very much each other's found family because they went to boarding school with each other and have these family lives that are, you know, a little bit less about loving each other and a little bit more about social status. In book one, you learn that Magnolia has been in a relationship with BJ, who is one of the main characters in this friendship group, and the book kind of starts with them in a very, very rocky place. You learn that they are no longer together. He has cheated on her, and you don't really know who with or why, and nobody else knows who with or why, because it's very much this situation where nobody can believe it because he has been besotted with her for so many years. As the book goes on, you find them like coming back to each other over and over again, but this issue seems to persist because she just cannot find out the truth. Now, this is where a lot of people get put off because they think it is a book glorifying toxic relationships, or they think the whole series is going to be this like toxic mess. And in some ways it is, but in some ways it isn't, because there's very much some things that you don't learn in this until like books 2 and 3, and they are very important reasons and situations that will make much more sense. And these books have such good character growth. I think the 4th book in the series is my favourite, which is Daisy Hates The Great Undoing. That is another thing. Books 2 and 4 follow different characters, Daisy and Julian Hates, who are present in the Magnolia Parks books, but they have a very different life. And it's just this big universe full of different relationships, and all of them are just so perfect. Jessa's writing as well is another thing that people will either love or hate. It's very lyrical, it's very flowery and poetic. I personally love that, but it definitely won't be for everyone. But I definitely think everyone should at least try these books because they are so unique and different. Another one of my god tier romance books that I have this beautiful special edition of is The Wall of Winnipeg and Me by Mariana Zapata. I love Mariana Zapata. I also love All Roads Lead Here, but this is the one that is like god tier for me and my favourite book of hers that I've read so far. It follows our female main character Vanessa, who is an assistant to a professional football player in Canada. Unfortunately, his green card is about to expire, so he randomly asks her to marry him, and she's like very shocked that he would even consider this because he's usually quite grumpy. He's not really a very nice boss to her, and she's like, why would I help you when you're horrible to me? But he makes it so that it's an offer she can't refuse, and so they decide to fake this marriage and engagement so that he can get his green card and stay and play football. When I tell you, this book is literally the definition of slow burn. There cannot be a slower slow burn, honestly. Like, the only thing that would rival this for biggest slow burn is Mariana's other book, All Roads Lead Here. If you like that trope and you like grumpy sunshine, you are gonna absolutely love this book. Plus, it's a sports romance. I personally had never read a sports romance that wasn't hockey before this one, but I still loved this even though it was football. This is like a really small thing, but I also just loved how much the author focused on Vanessa's hobbies and interests. Like, she is an artist who loves to draw. We're constantly hearing about the commissions that she's doing and the tattoo designs that she's drawing for people, and I just think it adds this like extra layer to her personality, and I could very much envision the type of person that she was, and her motivations were very clear to me and her ambitions were very clear to me, and the whole thing just made so much sense, and it was very easy and addictive to consume. I think I read this in like 2 days, even though it's for a romance book, it's quite chunky. So I would definitely recommend this if you like those tropes. Again, I cannot talk about romance without talking about Elle Kennedy. There's 2 books by her that I'm going to talk about today, but there are 3 books that are god tier, one from each of her series. In Off Campus, my god tier book is The Deal, but everybody knows that one, and I'm not going to talk about that one today. But then we also have Briar U and the College Diaries series. In Briar U, my favourite and my god tier book is The Risk. When I tell you that Brenna and Jake Connolly are one of the romance book couples that I think about most often, I'm not lying. I absolutely love this so much more than I thought I was going to. And again, it's because it has this character growth and change in dynamic that makes it so believable. When you first meet Brenna and Jake, they are both very confident, very cocky, very sassy, and they have so much banter between them. But as you get to know them, particularly Brenna, you see this whole different side to her personality and this guarded like secret that she keeps. And her sensitive side is very much relatable and appealing as someone who has like the harder exterior and outer shell. And then because you get to see this side of her, that also changes how Jake approaches things, and we see his sensitive, caring side. This book deals with some topics that I won't mention because it would be a spoiler, but it's not just a typical fluffy romance. There's actually some very sad parts in this, but if you've read Elle Kennedy and The Deal, then you'll know, because obviously The Deal has some hard-hitting topics in it that are handled quite sensitively, and this is very much similar to that. But yeah, this is one of my favourites ever. I want to reread it so bad. And then, like I said, I have one from the College Diaries series, and that is The Graham Effect. The Graham Effect follows Gigi, who is Garrett Graham's daughter from The Deal, so this very much is a next generation story, and it is just as perfect as its parents story. Like her father, she wants to be an ice hockey player, so I love that it is a daughter who is following in her father's footsteps, and it's the first time in the Elle Kennedy books where the girl is the female athlete. But then we have the love interest, Luke Ryder, who is 6'5" and also a hockey player, but he is like the enemy to her. And even though Garrett Graham is his personal hero, he accidentally makes a bad impression with him at the start of the book and a bad impression with Gigi, so he has his work cut out for him to redeem himself. Something happens in this book that I did not expect, and it just was like, whoa, like it just added a whole new level to this story. I honestly don't want to say too much about this one because I think if you've read The Deal, you kind of need to go into this like not knowing much about it so that you can have the best, most exciting reading experience, because that's what happened to me and it made it even more special. So just know that it is as good as The Deal, and it is just like a perfect hockey romance. If you know me, then you know I'm an Emily Henry stan. I love all her books, but Happy Place is my favourite and it is god tier. I honestly cried so much when I read this. I put photos all over my social media because I'm not really a crier, especially not like a sobber when I'm reading, and this very much changed that for me. If you like the TV show Friends, I would give this a go because it has this found family dynamic that is very similar to that show, and also is very relatable if you've ever had a situation where as you've grown older you've kind of grown apart from your friends, which is a very sad thing to experience but also kind of inevitable because your life changes so much as you get older. But in terms of the actual romance, this one is a second chance romance, and I personally love a second chance romance. I know that this is not one of people's most favourite popular romance tropes. I personally love it, and I think it is executed perfectly in this. It does have a bit of miscommunication trope, but I think that's what makes it so realistic, because let's be honest, in real life it is very hard to say what you're feeling and what you're thinking all of the time, especially when you're going through a breakup, which is obviously what has happened with this couple. But the story throughout this is perfect for summer because it is set in a little vacation town where they all go for a friendship group trip together. There's lots of revelations while they're there. There's lots of like uncomfortable topics, forced situations, but also a lot of humour, a lot of laughs, a lot of happy tears. It's just a very beautiful story. And again, I feel like Emily's writing is technically really strong, and it shows in this book especially. So that is my god tier romance books. Now I have to say, making this video made me realise that my list is not very diverse at all. I almost put 7 Days in June on there, and although I really love that book, it's just not quite god tier for me. So if you do have any more diverse romance recommendations, I would love to hear them, because I'm always trying to champion authors and books that represent all different types of people and all different types of societies. So please drop any recommendations you have in the comments below. But I hope there was something on the list there that you've not read yet and maybe you'll give a go. Particularly, I think Nightshade, because it's so underrated. I'm definitely hoping more people will read that one so I have people to talk to about it. But that was it for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Please make sure to like, share and subscribe, and I will see you next Monday for another video. Love you. Bye.